Hello, welcome back to Evil Genius Props. My name is Mike, and I will be your Evil Genius for today. And we are going to do a bit of an unusual project here to finish off our Summer of Tiki! That's right, we got our graphic. Anyway, what I'm doing today is fixing a sign for a rum distillery. In 2013, I was living a slightly different life and actually helped found Pittsburgh Cocktail Week, which lasted for all of 2 years, at which point it became awfully clear no one cared. So we stopped it, but in that process, I got to know and work with Maggie's Farm Rum down in the Strip District of Pittsburgh, and they actually opened their first bottle sales were Black Friday of 2013. And when they first opened, they had basically no signage outside. So to advertise and indicate where they were, the owner took a piece of construction scrap, painted rum for sale on it, and stuck it out front. And that was kind of their sign for actually 3 or 4 years easily before they had better signing and frankly too many people coming in as it was, so they didn't need to really advertise. Since then they've expanded, won National Spirits Awards, done just a whole lot of really great stuff, and I'm really happy to work with them. I still have friends who work there, but they have now a relatively new still facility in another part of town, and they kind of want to save that original sign as part of their history and have it up as decoration. But it's seen better days. It's broken. It's cracked. It's got, missing chunks. So they've asked me to sort of help figure out how to basically preserve it. We're kind of doing a museum-style preservation on it. So let's go over to the workbench and get started. All right, this is the full sign, and of course it is 36 inches tall, long, wide, however you want to describe this axis, and this one is 24 and a half, just to make it extra annoying for me, so I can't just use a 24-inch piece of plywood on the back. So I think what our plan is going to be is to cut a channel in a piece of wood to kind of go around the rim, the edge here, so there's a little bit of a gap to help hold it on. We're going to glue it as well, but I want something so it's not just holding on with the glue. It's cement board, so I worry about how well it's actually going to hold up long term. So we'll have something that sort of comes up and over as like a frame, up and over, and then a backing for the frame and this part together. So first thing we're going to do is actually cut that channel in some poplar. Alright, so the hardy board's about 1/2 inch thick, so I'm going to take this poplar and cut basically a chunk out on the corner here, so it's a 1/2 inch this way and a 1/2 inch this way, so a 1/2 inch square out. If I've set this up correctly, and there's a decent chance I haven't, when I cut it, I can go this way first, and it will be a 1/2 inch this way, so the cut will be, the edge of the cut will be a 1/2 inch up from the side, and then I can flip it over. I'll put the supported part here and cut it this way so that the part that's loose will kick out rather than kick back at me. So we'll get set up and do that cut. Alright, so when I make the next cut, I want to have the off cut be on the outside. got my chunk. Go check to make sure that this is set up the right way. All right, I've got the channel cut and test fit to make sure that it works. So I'm going to cut off the end. We're going to do miter joints on the top part of the frame because I'm fancy like that. As soon as I figure out which way I want it to go. And nope, that's the wrong way. All right, I got extra for a reason. So I'm going to put the whole thing together, the sign, and see where I need to cut this the other direction, and do another one. This will be the side parts. All right, so I've got our side pieces cut here, and working good. Slide right in there. And you'll see this chunk taken out down here, and this part's not quite straight anymore. Obviously that was the bottom. It lived a rough life. It's been a little damaged and broken. So what we're going to do is take a wider piece of board, put it underneath, and cut this part out so that it has something to sit on and into. That sort of preserves this. I like this a little bit actually as some character, really. So we'll do that, figure out how big the top needs to be, and get that cut. And then we just need to cut the backing and glue all that up. And throw some paint on there before we put the sign in, but figure it all out. Alright, so what I've done is I've got some other pieces of similar size wood underneath to support it, so it's not at an angle. Got this on. This is going to be our base piece, so I'm just going to go through and just doing that. I've got a rough shape. I'm probably not going to follow this directly, like all these little crags through here, especially since it's not evenly that way, but that gives me an idea of where to cut. So I'll just trim that stuff off, trim off some of the excess, probably over on the bandsaw, and just cut off most of this and then trim it out with the router. But that gives me, that's what my board looks like on the bottom. So just sort of cut. All right, that's next. So I've got all the sides of the frame cut out, and what I did was sort of put them together, tape them together on the corners just to sort of hold them in place. And I'm going to lay it out on plywood here. I'm going to kind of just rough cut this to shape a little bit and then I'll trim it back. I want to leave it long just in case without this, the measurements are a little bit off without the sign inside or something. Just because I know how I make things and my ability to not get anything straight. So we're going to do that. We'll cut it and then trim back the excess. So take my pencil and just sort of mark off about where I want this to be. And then I'll just cut that down to size. And then sort of start gluing everything together. I think before I do that, I'll figure out if we're going to stain it or paint it or what. I'm waiting to hear back from the guys at Maggie's and see what they want to do before I do that. So I'll get it sort of rough finished, decide what we're doing, so that way I can sort of glue it all down once. Alright, so I've got my backing board cut, I've got the frame cut, I've got the sign pieces. What I'm going to do is lay out the frame and the sign pieces onto the board, glue the board down, like first remove the frame, but glue the board down onto the backer here. That way I know I've got room around it for the frame. And what I want to make sure is that I don't cut anything too short and don't position this in the wrong place. That looks good. There's a little bit of overhang on the sides, tiny little bit on the top and the bottom. Maybe try to square that off a little bit. Easier said than done. All right. So the idea is without moving the sign, we're going to take off the frame. Tape held together for what we needed it to. It's not going to stick together forever, so we're going to take that off. Set that aside. I'm going to mark off sort of my edges a little bit, just so that everything ends up in roughly the same place. I don't want to put it on, like take off the top part, put down the glue, put it back on, and then it's not in the same spot. All right. So thinking about ways to keep it in place, I'm going to just do some clamps onto it there. Hopefully that'll help hold it in place. I don't really think I necessarily need to use like a clamping call, but I've got it, so I'm going to use it. If I can keep this one in place, I can sort of line the others up with it. So for an adhesive, I have, it's actually Quikrete construction adhesive. It's designed specifically for like repairing concrete, which actually is why I have it. But it also will bond perfectly to wood. So since I'm gluing a concrete board onto wood, I feel like this is a good option. eventually got enough more globbed on there. We'll put our top part on. And then I'm just going to do the same thing down here at the bottom. Alright, I got everything glued on there. We're going to let that sit and finish its thing, though even just try to squeeze this one into place. It's definitely adhering pretty well. So I think we're good. We're going to let that set up and then come back and put our frame on around it. So that's going to be our next step. But let's let that set up so that when we put the frame on, it doesn't scoot around at all. All right, while the adhesive is setting up on the sign part, we're going to sand these down real quick, clean them up, and then stain them. We're going to do a dark walnut stain on them, and that will sort of work well with that gray and black theme that we've got going there on the rest of the sign. Call that sanded down well enough. Sort of broke the edges a little bit on the sides as well. And we're gonna just go ahead and put down some paper underneath and then put some stain on this while that glue's setting up. All right, again, we'll use some of the dark walnut and just go ahead and apply this on here. Let that do its thing, and glue still going on the sign part, so we'll be able to put all this together here soon. All right, so I'm going to take the stained frame pieces and attach those onto here. I'm going to glue those onto the board as well as together, so like the miters. And once we have that done, let all of that dry and come out and just trim off this extra backing board with a trim router and a flush cut bit. Alright, I'm going to let the glue dry and then probably actually come in after that and put some screws in there. Alright, glue is nicely set. I'm going to go ahead and take the trim router here and run that along the edge and trim off the extra bit of the backing board. And then I'm probably going to go over and do another little bit of stain on the edges. So I'm going to sand off the edges here and In some places there's a little bit of a line where the little bearing wrote on it. So I'm going to go ahead and sort of redo all of that bit, but it's cut to the right size now. All right, I went ahead and stained the sides and knocked the edges off of the plywood here. And normally the glue would probably be enough on a normal sort of frame situation, but because the hardboard is heavy, I want to actually use some mechanical means of attachment as well. So I'm going to do some screws along the sides, and just to make sure that it doesn't split or anything else, we're going to do pilot holes and also countersink. All right, that's it. It's all done. Ready to go back to them. Pretty happy with how that turned out. One of those where it could have been really easy to just sort of glue it to a board, but I feel like this will last longer, and potentially also it just looks better. So really happy with the way this little bit turned out. Like I said, I think it gives it a little bit of character. And you know, I didn't glue back the broken pieces. Don't want to erase the history. Just preserve it. Alright, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks.